All right, Algebra 2, Section 1.3 notes. Um, Objective or how to solve a linear equation, which you guys have done a bunch of times. And basically, the main part of algebra, one of the main things you do in algebra is trying to get x by itself. And whether it's linear, quadratic, whatever, you always just got to get x by itself. So let's start with this one. The first thing we always want to do is isolate the x. So we do that by adding or subtracting. In this case, we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. Okay, so we got 4/5 x equals 12. Okay, so I always want to get the isolate the x by itself, and anything that's outside of the x is not attached to the x, you want to get rid of first. Then if you remember to get rid of 4/5, a lot of people say, well, if it's 4/5 times x, you're going to divide by 4/5, but we don't divide fractions. Okay, so what we got to do is multiply by the reciprocal, which the reciprocal is 5/4. So we're going to multiply both sides by 5/4. Okay, and there's two ways you can multiply 12 by 5/4. You can, well, let's look at the left side. 5 is going to cancel out, 4 is going to cancel out, involve x. So whatever x, 12 times 5/4 will be x. You could do 12 times 5, which is 60, and then 60 divided by 4, which is 15. Or you can do what I like doing is if there's a whole number and a fraction, I take the whatever the bottom number is, if it goes in the whole number, I reduce that, and 4 goes in 12 3 times. So I end up with just 3 times 5 is 15. Either way works, okay? If you plug that back in, I'll allow you guys to check your work on your own. I can do it in my head. 4 times 4/5 will be 12. 12 plus 8 is 20. So you can see it works. But you need to check your work to make sure you do it right. It's very important that you do that and prove that you know the right answer. Okay. Word problem. We talked about how we hate word problems. So let's set it up. Make sure we set it up the right way. During one shift, the waiter earns wages of $30 and gets an additional 15% in tips on customer food bills. The waiter earns $105. What is the total of the customer's food bills? Okay. So it says write a verbal model, then write an equation, then write 50% as decimal. So we'll have to do that eventually. Okay. So a verbal model will be, let's see, how much she earns. Okay. So wages plus 15% of tips equals how much she made, which would be $105. Is how I'd write the verbal model. Okay. And there's other ways to write it, maybe more wordy, but that's how I think it. You get your wages plus your 15% tips, and you have your $105. So the wages is $30 plus 15%, which we need to write as a decimal, so 0.15 times the tips. Do we know what is the total of the customer's food bills? Okay. Well, that's what 15% tips on the customer's food bills is what we got to find out. That's our x, which is all algebra is, trying to solve for an unknown. We're just trying to solve a problem. So let's make that x equals 105. And then we do use the same rules. Once we have set as the algebraic equation, we're just going to subtract 30 from both sides, which gives us 0.15x equals, what is that, 5, 10 minus 3, 75. So we got 75. Then the last step to get this by itself is to divide by what the coefficient of x. Coefficient was 0.15. 0.15. And we get x equals, I know that's a bad one, 0.15. So 75 divided by 0.15, I don't have a calculator ready. Is $500. Okay. So now we figured out if we plug that back in, let's plug that back in and see if it works. Let's do 500 times 0.15. Okay, because you got 15% of $500. If you do 500 times 0.15, you get $75. And then 75 plus the wages she earns 30 equals 105. So we can check our work and make sure it works. But that's how we need to set up the problem and just write it out. Try and make it make sense to you so that you can solve it. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to solve one of these. I want the other ones to solve on your own. If you get to class and you struggle, we can talk about them in class, but I want you to solve them on your own. I think you'll be able to. Let's solve this bottom one together. Okay, so the first thing we do is subtract 1. Subtract 1. So you get negative 3/5 x equals 3. Okay. The next step, just like the other one, we don't divide by fractions. So if you have a fraction in front of x, what you have to do is multiply by the reciprocal. And maybe we need to do is do some fraction worksheets and work on multiplying by fractions again. So we're going to multiply both sides by negative 5/3, which on the right side, all those will cancel out. The 3's cancel out. The 5's cancel out. The negatives cancel out. We just have x. On the other side, again, you can think of that as negative 3 times negative 5 is negative 15 over 3, which is negative 5. Or you can just cancel out. Since 3 goes into 3 once, you can just cancel the 3's out. Either way, you're going to get negative 5 as your answer. Okay. Do the other two on your own, and if you have questions, ask, and we can check them in class. All right. A real estate agent's base salary is $22,000 per year. The agent earns 4% commission on total sales. How much must the agent sell to earn $60,000 one year? Very similar to the waitress or the waiter and tips problem. Okay. So you have your base salary. I want to call it BS, but then people would start saying something. So we just call it base salary plus 4% of the commission. I'll just call it COMM equals $60,000. Okay. Well, because that's how much he wants to earn. So the base salary is $22,000 plus 4%, which has a decimal. Don't write 0.4, that is 40%. Make sure you write 0.04. A lot of people butcher that and end up getting it wrong. Okay, 4% is 0.04 times, we don't know how much commission he made. We don't know how much he sold, so that's going to be our X equals $60,000. Okay, so then we're going to subtract 22,000 for both sides. And we have 0.04x equals 60 minus 22,000, 40,000 minus 2,000, 38,000. And the last step, to get x by itself, we're going to divide by the coefficient, which is 0.04. We always divide by the coefficient unless it's a fraction. And even if it's a fraction, you do it right in your calculator, you can still divide by the coefficient. It's just not the proper way to do it. But whenever you have a number in front of x, divide by that to get your answer. So the 0.4's cancel out. We have x equals 38,000 divided by 0.04, which equals 950,000. That's how much, that is the unknown. That is how much the agent must sell to earn $6,000 one year. You got to sell $950,000 in houses, which, if you think about it, that's about, depending on where you sell them, about 5 houses, maybe more if it's their cheaper houses and less if they're more expensive houses. Okay. So if you're interested in being real estate, that's what you have to do. You only got to sell 6 houses a year and you make $6,000. Not bad. Okay. All right. When variables are on both sides, there's multiple ways to start it. Okay. Some people like to have their P's all on the left side. Some people like to keep their P's positive. In this case, they say they like to keep their P's positive. So let's just do what they did. Let's write out the equation. Got 7P plus 13 equals 9P minus 5. So you're going to subtract 7P from both sides and get 13 equals, because those cancel out, 9P minus 7P is 2P minus 5. Okay. Then we're going to add 5 to both sides to isolate the P. So first thing, when you have both letters on both sides, you want to combine like terms. You always want to do the letters first. It always makes it easier, because once you do the letters first, then it's just the normal linear equation problems that you've always had. But if you do the numbers first, then some people get confused on combining the letters. Always try and combine the letters first. So you add 5, you get 18 equals 2P. The last step is divide by 2, and you get 9 equals P. No, that's not a very good 9. Okay, you can plug that back in and check it. I'm just going to do a quick mental check, but you can plug it back in. 9 times 7 is 63. plus 13 equals 9 times 9 is 81 minus 5. 63 plus 13 is 73, 76. And 81 minus 5 is 76. So it does check out. It does work. Okay. This one says use the distributing property to solve. So what we're going to do first is distribute. So distribute, when you distribute, you multiply. So you get 15x minus 24 equals negative 2 times negative x is a positive 2x. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14 minus 12x. Okay. I know that's a bad 12x. Let's try and fix that a little bit. Wow. Minus 12x. Okay. Next step we're going to do is subtract 2x. Well, we're going to combine like terms first. So, because on the right side we have like terms like we did before on earlier, we got a group like terms. So 2x minus 12x, negative 10x minus 14. Then we have to add 10x to both sides. You could also subtract 15x to both sides, but in this case, you'll get your variables on the left, which usually people like, and also you'll keep your variables positive, so I think it's easier to add 10x. But you could do it the other way too. So you got 25x minus 24 equals negative 14. Okay, and then we have to isolate the x by itself, so we do that by adding 24, which we get 25x equals negative 14 plus 24 is 10. And then the last step is to get x by itself, regardless. And a lot of people mess this up. You can divide a smaller number by a bigger number. It just becomes a fraction that you have to reduce down. Whenever you have x, a coefficient of x equal to something, you have to divide by the coefficient. So the 25s cancel out, leaving us with x. And 10 over 25, they both have a common factor of 5. So we just reduce them both down by 5 to reduce the fraction. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 25 divided by 5 is 5. So x equals 2/5. Okay. You can always plug it back in and check it. I'm kind of running out of room here, but you need to plug it in and check your work. All right. That's very important that you do that so you can make sure you get it right. And also, it's just extra practice on operations that you're doing. Okay. Let's do this one together. I was going to have you guys do this on your own, but okay. Adding fractions. When you add fractions, they have to have the same denominator. So what we need to do is, since these are like terms, make it have the same denominator. So we need to figure out what's the smallest number that goes into 4 and 5, or the smallest number that 4 and 5 go into. Apologize. So 4 and 5, the smallest number goes into is 20. So what I'm going to do is make this a denominator of 20, and I'm going to do that by multiplying what times 4 gives you 20 is 5. So I'm going to do 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Okay, because 5/20 is still 1/4. It's just like if I made 1 out of 4 free throws, I'm shooting 25%. But if I made 5 out of 20 free throws, I'm still shooting 25%. This one, we want to make it 20 as well. So what are we going to multiply that by? Well, 4 times 5 equals 20. So we have 8 over 20. Okay. Again, 8 over 20 and 2/5 are the same thing. It's just now that they're like terms. Equals 39. So now we can combine like terms. 5/20 plus 8/20 is 13/20. So we'd have 13/20 x. Don't make it 13/40. Remember, when you add fractions, they have to have the same denominator, but you don't add the denominator. So you have 5/20 and 8/20. How many 20ths do you have total? You have 13/20. Okay, equals 39. Okay. The next step is we're going to multiply. You can divide by 13/20 if you have the right calculator, but in this case, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal if you have a fraction, which is 20, run out of room, 20 out of 13, or 20 over 13. Which the 20s will cancel out, 13s will cancel out, and we'll left with just x. Okay. On the other side, this isn't the one where I'm going to probably do 39 times 20 and then divide by 13. I'm going to recognize that 39 and 13 are common factors. 13 goes into 39 three times. So I can reduce that down to 3 and that down to 1. So the 1 really doesn't even matter anymore. Okay, so now I have 3 times 20, which is 60. So x equals 60. Okay, you can plug that back in your work. 1/4 of 60 is 15. 2/5 of 60 is 12 times 2, 24. And that will give you 39. Okay, so you can plug back your numbers in and check your work. It's very important to do that. All right, I'm going to leave you guys to have these on your own. Do them on your own, and then if you have trouble, bring them to class, and we'll go over those in class. Okay. Your assignment might not be this. Okay, we don't have books yet, and so they'll probably be off the worksheet that we already have, the 1.3 section. But I will let you know when you get to class. Bring all questions to class. Make sure you take good notes, and I'll see you next time.